All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending our digital takeout and put on by both the College of Humanities and Social Sciences as well as Utah State University's Career Services. Yeah, thanks everyone who's here today. And before we begin, I want everyone to feel free to use the chat function to let us know, if there's any technical difficulties that might be happening. And then also, the question and answer feature to ask questions throughout the presentation. Have our media intern London monitoring those. And then we'll also be using those to ask questions for the presenter during the presentation as well. And I know it can be hard not being able to see everyone right off. So if you could just put a short message about who you are and kind of what you're doing in the chat function, that would be great as well. And then now I'm going to just turn the time over to Andre to introduce today's guest.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. My name is Andrea DeHaan. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Digital Takeout. I'm going to be introducing our guest today. Her name is Andrea Sandry Jensen, and she graduated from Utah State University with a Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Arts and Sciences, along with the International Relations Certificate, and a Master's of Science in Instructional Technology. Her career path has been valid and fulfilling, and the core driver in career decisions has always been based on her passion for education and developing others. During 18 years at Weber State University, she worked with college-bound high school students as the early college academic advisor before moving into a role as a Weber State University online instructional designer, helping faculty build engaging online courses and developing best practices for facilitating learning in an online setting. During her last 8 years at the university, she led an online team as the executive director and influenced university initiatives such as the acquisition of Canvas as the learning management system, implementation of electronic rank and tenure review, and development of a WSU digital literacy program. True to her passion for education and developing others, she spent 9 years concurrently teaching communication classes part-time as an adjunct professor at Utah State University and Weber State University. 18 months ago, she took a leap of faith and moved outside her comfort zone from higher education to the corporate sector at Discover Financial Services. She now has the privilege of being part of the leadership team that strategizes and implements company-wide onboarding training and leading a talented team of instructional designers as a curriculum design manager. She leverages her expertise as a learning professional to infuse Discover's onboarding training curriculum with online and blended learning best practices employed in higher education and industry. Andrea and her husband Jake are the parents of 3 talented and energetic daughters, and their family loves sharing hobbies such as biking, road trips, soccer, and enjoying musical theater. Please help me in welcoming our guest today, Andrea Jensen. And Andrea, I am going to stop sharing my screen so that I can allow you to answer the first question, which is to tell us just a little bit about how you came to your current occupation, and what your career path looked like along the way and what it is you like about your current job.
Okay, great. Is it okay if I share my slides now?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and share that just because some of what I wanted to talk about as far as mentoring had a lot to do with my career path. And so I thought it'd be helpful to just kind of diagram that. Can everyone see my screen? Wonderful. Okay, so I listed my education as the foundation for my employment because I feel like that is really the thing that made all of my employment opportunities available for me. So my first job was as a peer advisor in an academic advisement center. It was the Science HAS Advising Center at that time. And I did that while I was in school. And that education, that experience that I gained while I was getting my education led to the first job that I had out of college, which I'll show on the next one. And then when I was a graduate student, I had the opportunity to work as a coordinator for a freshman retention program that was geared for minority students. So that was another excellent opportunity for me to build my skill set and prepare for post-college work. And then at the very end of my internship, I did a brief, about 4-month internship with Budget Group Incorporated, and that was my one little experience with the corporate setting before the job that I have now. And so that's pretty much what I did while I was in college. And then when I left school, I went straight to Weber State University and started my 18-year career there as a high school academic advisor. And so this job is the one that I got because I had been a peer advisor at Utah State. And I did that for about 4 years. It was really fun to work with high school students to help them utilize their opportunities through early college and concurrent enrollment and put those different opportunities together into a development plan for them that would help them not only graduate from high school and meet those requirements, but also do what they needed to be prepared for college and to be making progress toward their college degree while they were in high school. And then after that job, I moved to an instructional design job. So this was 4 years after I had finished my graduate work and I was finally using my degree, which was very exciting for me. And I loved doing that work. I loved working with faculty, developing courses. I did a lot of faculty professional development. And during this time, with both of these jobs, I worked as an adjunct instructor, and this was just a side thing. It was one of those jobs where the first time I got the paycheck, I thought, I can't believe they pay me for this, because it was so much fun. And I was so energized by the interaction with students that I would drive home from Logan to Ogden once a week and I'd just be pumped up because it had been such a good experience. And I loved doing that. Then in 2011, I started working as the director of WSU Online. This was a big change for me. I had never had anyone report to me directly, and I was fairly confident that I did not want that. But I chose to do this pretty much because of some advice that I received from a mentor, and it ended up being a fantastic decision. I loved the work that I did. I loved the opportunity to develop other people. It was really great to be able to influence university policy and direction for online education, and I'm very passionate about that. And then all of those things have given me the foundation that I need for the current job, which is very, very, very different. So right now I'm the curriculum design manager for Discover Financial Services. I'm one of 3. And we are in charge of the overall strategy for all onboarding of new agents for Discover. So if you call Discover about a loan that you have or your credit card and you talk to one of those agents, they have been trained using the training that we develop and strategize. And this was a huge shift for me because I loved the altruistic nature of all the good I could do at a university, and working in the corporate setting I knew would be very different. But I recognized that I would have an opportunity to make the onboarding experience really positive for the new agents, and that could make a difference for them in their personal and professional lives. And Discover also has a really great management system that has helped me to fine-tune my coaching abilities and my skills as a manager. And that's actually why I took the job, because I knew that I would be able to learn things through this job that I wouldn't have the opportunity to learn at Weber State. And so I took it as a challenge, and it's been wonderful. And I think part of the question was what I like about my job and my career path. My career path is not anything like I thought it would be. I know a lot of people say you should have a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, and all of your goals should be helping you reach those things. And I definitely agree with that. But my career path has never followed the plan. I have found that any success I've found in my career has been because I've worked hard in the role that I've had and taken advantage of additional opportunities. And then opportunities have kind of been dropped in my lap. My graduate program I selected because I had a day to pick a graduate program in order to take a graduate assistantship. And I had heard good things about instructional technology. I went to a department picnic that happened to be that night. I met students and faculty and staff from the department, and they were amazing. and I knew a little bit about what instructional designers did. But I chose to apply for the program because I was so impressed with the people, and I felt that a program that attracted people like that is something I would enjoy. And then the first 3 months of the program, I would go home every day and tell my roommates, I am in the most perfect program possible for me. I just feel like I was dropped here by someone else who knew what I needed more than I knew what I needed, and it's just been like that. All the career opportunities have been really amazing as well. Very challenging. It's not like it's all peachy. It's really easy to stand here and smile and say how great it's been, but they've also been really challenging, and the challenges are the things that have helped me to grow and develop in my career.
Wow, thanks so much for that. So I know today we're going to be talking a lot about mentors and mentorship and such. And so, Andrea, I wanted to ask you then, who do you consider to be like your primary mentor, and kind of what was your path in developing that relationship?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. I would say that I don't have one primary mentor. I have several mentors who have been very influential at different times in my career. And so I'll go ahead and show on the next slide how this has worked. So this slide is really focused on my experience at Utah State University with my employment that we already talked about. But during this time, toward the end of my undergraduate work, John Sider approached me. He's a communication professor, and if anyone's had a class from him or worked with him, you know that he's amazing. Students love him because he cares about students individually. So I didn't know about finding a mentor. I didn't know it was something that I should do, but he kind of found me and gave me an opportunity to do some research. So he approached me and said, I'd like to do this research. I need someone to do the legwork. And so we did research on the impact of facial piercings on job candidate perception. So I found a model to have a piercing in different parts of his face and worked with a photographer to take all the pictures. John created the survey for collecting the data, and then I went to every job fair I could find across northern Utah and went and had potential employers fill out these surveys looking at pictures of this person, this job candidate. And then John worked on the analysis of the data. I did all the input. So I did a lot of the work that was kind of grunt work, but I learned a lot in the process. And I got to work with John, which was just amazing. And he told me, I'll put you as a co-author on this when we're ready to present it at a conference, which was very generous. And so I did it. And eventually I had the opportunity to present this research at a conference. And then later, when John realized that I had an interest in academia and that I wanted to teach and that I may want to teach full-time, he extended the offer and made it more generous and said, I'm going to list you on the publication anytime we use this data. So as a result, I ended up with several publications when I was really new in my career. And I'm not sure if those have made a difference or not, but it was really a fun experience to have that be a part of it, my learning. And then I also knew that if I wanted to eventually get a PhD and work at a university, that would also be really critical. So John took me under his wing and helped me with that project. And I thought it was great. And when we finished, I thanked him, and I knew that he would always be someone I would turn to if I had questions. And then I graduated, and I had an opportunity at Weber State to teach as an adjunct for their first year experience course. And at Weber, if you work there and you have a master's degree or higher, you can teach that course because it's not discipline specific. So I taught that class, and although the curriculum was not my favorite, I loved the experience of teaching. And so I reached out to John and I said, John, I'm really interested in doing this more. I'd like to apply for some jobs. Can you take a look at my resume and let me know if I need to adjust anything? And so again, I didn't know that I needed a mentor. I just did this because I knew that he was someone who could give me the right perspective and help point me in the right direction. And so he wrote back and said, it looks fantastic. I wouldn't change anything, but sometimes we hire adjuncts here at USU, and if you're interested, I would love to offer that to you at some point when we need someone. And I said, of course. And then 2 months later, they needed an adjunct, and so I started teaching there. And I taught at USU for 9 years because of that relationship that I had with John. So reaching out to him and kind of organically forming a mentor relationship helped him to understand what my career aspirations were. I think it also helped that he knew that I saw him as the expert, and I considered him to be a friend. So, so that started my job, my adjunct teaching job, which was phenomenal. And then later, he had some additional research opportunities. So as you can see on the slide, I did some research with him on the influence of background behavior on televised debates. So we did that research together, and I got published again, which was great. And then later in my career, when I was moving into my role as the director of WSU Online, I tapped into some relationships that I had developed as an instructional designer. And these were relationships with faculty members at Weber State University. They were, some people would consider staff and faculty to be peers. Sometimes the relationships don't feel this way, but in these cases, these two individuals were very much peers, and we worked very collaboratively together. And so one of them was Kathy Sitzman. She was a professor of nursing at Weber State University, and she had a particular interest, a research interest in caring science. And so when she wanted to work on projects, I would occasionally provide support just as a part of my job, but we developed a friendship. And so when I was making the decision about whether or not to leave my, at that time, part-time instructional design job to take a much more demanding director position, I had a lot of concerns. And I reached out to her. I felt strongly that I needed to talk to her, and I thought I knew what she was going to recommend. So I actually avoided contacting her for a little while, even though I really respect her. The advice she gave me was very different than what I was expecting. She never told me, you need to do this, or I think you should do that. She simply asked me questions that helped me look at the opportunity differently than I had before, which was exactly what I needed to see that opportunity as what it would mean for me and my family. And because of her advice, I actually hired a nanny who worked for my family for 9 years, who's really a part of our family. So that particular relationship has helped me so much. And I keep in touch with Kathy. So again, this was very organic. I never reached out to her and said, will you be my mentor? But I always reached out when I knew her expertise would help me to frame a situation differently than how I was seeing it. Or if I knew that she was really good at doing something that I was struggling with. And there were times I would just say, I really need to talk about this particular issue I'm dealing with at work. It could be a relationship at work or how to handle a project. And we would just talk through it. And she would give me advice. And we got to work on a caring science course that is, it's a MOOC, which stands for Massive Open Online Course, which is offered on the Canvas network. And this particular course has been accessed by medical professionals and a variety of people all over the world. It's been so successful that she was actually hired by the health department for a South American country to come there and train their healthcare providers. It was really kind of an exciting project to work on. And although that project maybe had less to do with the mentoring role, I felt like it was important to share some of the projects that we worked on, because I do think that some of these projects have made a huge difference as far as me developing and nurturing those mentor relationships and understanding how they could be mutually beneficial. So the last person that I've listed here as a mentor is Jordan Hampson Utley, and she also was a professor at at Weber State University. She taught oh my gosh, sorry. Everything just left my mind. She was in health professions and she taught athletic training, excuse me. And she's very, very innovative. She loved using technology, and our relationship was a little bit different. She was a part of a professional development program that our office offered. So the first time we interacted with each other, I was teaching her in a training course, and I was assessing the assignments that she submitted. And then we realized that we had a lot of similar interests. And eventually she moved on to a role where she was teaching part-time and then also working with faculty development half-time. And so we got to work very closely together, and we developed 2 new professional development programs for faculty, one of which I think is still being offered at Weber State today. And then we had opportunities to present at conferences together. And Jordan was actually really instrumental for me in learning how to use my resources better. So although she also became a friend, I would reach out to her when I needed help, and she helped me to learn how to delegate. You would think that by the time I had been working for probably at this point 14 years in my career, I'd be a little bit better at delegating, but I was just really oblivious to some things that I could easily delegate that would really free up my schedule and allow me to focus on the things that I could do best in my role. And so she helped me with that, in addition to a variety of other things. So that's a very long response to your short answer, your short question about who my primary mentor is. There are several others that I could probably list, but these are the people who I think have made the biggest impact. I have some mentors now who I would say are going to impact things further down the timeline that aren't here because they haven't happened yet, but I anticipate that there will be an influence there.
Thank you. Andrea, what would you say is the first step people should take if they're interested in looking for a mentor, right? We're talking about mentors today. We're hoping that our listeners are going to get a sense for the importance of having a mentor. But really, if we go all the way back to start, how do you go about finding a mentor in the first place?
That's a great question. I think there's a couple of questions that you should ask yourself first when you're looking for a mentor. And I think the first one is to consider, what do you need from a mentor relationship? If you need help with something really specific, like you're struggling with a particular capability, maybe you're not good at public speaking, or you need help with communicating your progress on a project and involving all the right people, or maybe you've gotten feedback from an employer about a particular opportunity that you have. A mentor is a great way to address really specific concerns. So in that case, I would take a look at the people in your network, people you work with, people who work with people you work with, people you know through your family and other connections who maybe work in other areas completely, but you know they're very effective at a particular thing that you would like to be really effective at doing. And you could reach out to them. And in that kind of a case where it's very specific, kind of localized, it might be easier to ask someone to be a mentor because you're not asking for a huge time commitment. You're asking for help with a really specific deliverable or behavior. And so that's one way to do it. And in that case, you would definitely consider your network. Another way to do it is if you're looking for a long-term mentor, maybe someone who you can develop a relationship with and tap into their expertise for a very long time, then I would say, again, look at your network and find someone who's doing what you want to do, or who's maybe doing something different, but the way they do it is how you want to conduct yourself. So even if you're not doing the same sort of work, if they're really effective at what they do, they can give you some tips. If you happen to be in a job where you have access to a lot of people, like I happen to work in a place where a lot of people work from home, it's really easy for me to say, I'm trying to work on this one particular thing. could you come to this WebEx meeting and observe me and give me feedback? That may be a little more difficult if you're in an environment that is traditionally face-to-face, especially once the pandemic is over and we all go back to a little bit more of the normal. But if you are looking for more of a long-term mentor, you can have them. It would be great if you could pick someone who has an opportunity to observe the work that you do so they can give feedback. So to kind of recap, I think the first thing to do is to consider the people who you know and the people that those people know, and identify what's most important to you in a mentor, and then just ask them. You could say, will you be my mentor? You could say, I need help with this one particular thing. Or you could say, I'd like to work on a project with you. I'm really interested in developing this particular aspect of my skill set, and I know you're good at it. So the next time you have a project like this, can you involve me so that I can contribute and learn along the way? And I didn't do that necessarily. I wasn't looking for a mentor. Like I said, it happened very organically, but there's definitely a pattern to what I did. And every mentor relationship that I ended up with had a project associated with it. And I think that that was what made those relationships so valuable, because we were working together on things and they were understanding what I brought to the table. They could see what my strengths were and my opportunities, and they could provide really specific coaching as a result of that.
Thanks so much. So Andrea, I'm thinking for this next one, I think I'm gonna change it up just a little bit from what we had before. So I know like mentor relationships, they tend to be like really personal with some people, and so I don't know if I've heard a lot of like how people have organically developed mentorships or even their network that way. And so I'm wondering, at least from the people you've talked with as colleagues and people you've interacted with, how do their approach kind of differs? Sometimes people have like you were mentioning, sort of a network of mentors. Other people are trying to develop that long-term mentorship. What do you think is kind of the difference in those approaches, and kind of how have you noticed what other things people have done in developing those mentor relationships?
Yeah, so there are definitely a variety of ways to develop those relationships, and there's differences in what you can get from the relationship depending on whether or not you have a network or just one mentor. I've addressed a little bit of that already, but I think I have colleagues who have developed very formal mentor relationships. So they have actually approached people and said, I'm looking for a mentor and I would love it if you could give me some time to do this. And they've actually spelled out all the expectations up front. So this is how much time I'd like you to commit, an hour a month. We'll do lunch. In those cases, if they're meeting face-to-face, then the mentee is generally offering to pay for the lunch as just a thank you for the time that they're getting. And like I said, they're looking for some specific things. I think in those cases, there's generally a friendship that develops. And in all of my experience, there's always a layer of friendship. I don't think that has to be there to be effective. I'm a very relationships are a huge deal for me. Friendships are a big deal. The working with good people is a big deal. I won't keep a job if I don't like working with the people I'm working with. But that's not the case for everybody. So that was really important to me. But I think it's very possible to have a mentor relationship that's very much just strictly professional, that doesn't cross the boundaries into the lines of friendship. So I think it just is a matter of what works for you. But as far as just the differences between having a network or having one, I think it's really just about what you want, what you need from the relationship. And I think in either case, if you can look for opportunities to provide a benefit back to the mentor, that's always an added bonus. you know. And that what you can offer may depend on your situation. And I'm not saying you need to pay a mentor. It's nothing like that. But if a mentor is taking time to coach you on things, you could offer some time to help with something where they need help, and they'll better understand where they should ask you for help, and you'll better understand where you can offer help as you develop that relationship. I also think it's important for in nurturing a mentor relationship for you to be the one to keep up on it. So I don't think anyone would expect that a mentor would reach out periodically and say, hey, we haven't touched base in a while. Let's schedule some time. You should do that. Make it as easy as possible for the person who's helping you to provide that mentoring experience. Does that answer your question?
Yes. One quick follow-up. Have you ever been in a situation where all of a sudden now you're the mentor, and how you're working, how was that when you first realized that?
Yes, I have done that, but all organic, informal. No one has ever approached me and said, will you be my mentor? But I've had several experiences where people have changed job paths and they are now in an area where they could benefit from my expertise. And it's generally just them saying, hey, I'm doing this now. Recently, it was someone who's connected to my family who said, I have this new job. I'm promoting pretty quickly. I have an opportunity to apply for a professional development program for potential leaders, and I don't know how to prepare for that interview. So we set aside some time and we talked about what I would look for if I was interviewing for someone for something like that, and then whenever we've connected for personal things, we talk about that a little bit. In this most recent case, the person I gave advice to said, I got accepted, and we were both excited. And then she said, well, I'm kind of disappointed because the company is only offering, this only is 16 hours a month. That's all I'm getting. And I said, well, that's an hour, that's a day every other week. That's fairly significant. And then she said, they also have special training 2 days a month. And I said, okay, let's reframe this. Your company is giving you paid work time to develop professionally for, on average, 1 day a week. That's a big deal. And she hadn't seen it that way. So just that small conversation helped her reframe and realize that her company was really investing in her. And I think she will appreciate this opportunity a little bit more when she sees it through that light. But this one's new. We'll see how it goes. I love opportunities like that. You asked about what that felt like when I realized that I was doing this. I love it because I love being a part of other people's development. It really is at the core of why I work. And so when I can do that in my personal time, I love doing that.
All right, and our final question, Andrea, before we go to Q&A, and I will just remind the audience, if you're listening and you have any questions for our guests today, please use the Q&A feature. You're welcome to ask questions, and we will move to those shortly. In the meantime, if you could just tell us, we've spent the time talking about the importance of mentors and mentorship, but you have obviously had a few pivots in your own career. Have there been other resources that have been important to you in helping to frame career decisions when you're making them, aside from mentors?
Definitely. There are a lot of resources that have made a difference for me. And I guess some of these resources are more or less available depending on where you are in your career. So I could kind of start from undergraduate experience and then work my way up, and maybe some of this will resonate with people depending on where they are in their career. I think as an undergraduate, one of the best things you can do is to look for opportunities to be involved in some way, whether it's an organization that's a part of the academic program you're in or something extracurricular. I did a lot of extracurricular things at USU. None of those things led to a job, but every single one of them helped me develop confidence that came across in job interviews. And I definitely think that I was more prepared to work and to represent myself as a result of the extracurricular. I talked already about the undergraduate research that I did. That was a huge deal. I had a couple of good relationships with faculty members, and when I needed help with a letter of recommendation or a question about a job search, I would turn to them. And who doesn't want someone else to say, hey, you're an expert on this and I'd like your advice? Like, we all want people to want to learn from our experiences. And so I did that because I needed it, but I think it also made a difference in helping me decide where I wanted to go. I had some great conversations with faculty who helped me to really frame what it meant to have certain jobs and how long-term my life would be impacted by the choices I made when I was in college. I explained that I had a brief stint doing corporate work in my internship, and when I finished that, I had a really great conversation with a mentor who had helped me through my graduate program. He happened to be my graduate chair, and I told him, I never want to work in the corporate setting again. It's cutthroat. I'm not doing that. Here I am. But that experience and the conversations that we had really helped me to shape the direction that I took. I changed my job search completely. And at that point, I was looking for instructional design work and anything else where I felt like I could make a positive difference. And when I finished graduate school, I had a couple offers for instructional design jobs, but I took an academic advising job because I felt really strongly that that was where I should be. It was one of those gut decisions. It ended up being great. I wondered at the time if I was closing the door to instructional design because it's very much technology based. And I knew that every year I was out of the field, I was that much further away from what is happening in the field right then. So during that time, I took advantage of resources that would help me stay up to date on things. So I learned to use the learning management system that we used at Weber State University because I would need that as an instructional designer, and that was something I could do on the side. I looked for resources online that would help me stay up to date on that. And then as blogs became more available and popular, that was the easiest way to stay up to date because you can find people who are experts in your field or the field you want to move into, and you get to see how they see the field and how they're handling issues in that field and what they see as the future. I mean, a lot of people who blog really love to talk about what they think is the future of their field and their expertise. And so you can get a lot of expertise, some insight that way. So that can help shape career decisions. Regarding some of the other decisions that I made later, I actually made quite a few decisions based on what was best for my family. So like I said, I have a plan for what I want in my career. I would not consider myself a ladder climber. I have never once listed as a goal to move up to the next level. And I don't know if anyone is going to shame me for saying that. I have moved up levels in my career. I've had several promotions, and but I have always made the decisions based on what's best for my family because although I love my work, it's not everything to me. And if I'm not happy with my work, then it affects all other aspects of my life. And so when I'm happy with my work, then everything I get from my family helps energize what I do at work. And everything that's great at work helps energize what I do with my family. So when I was an instructional designer, I went from full-time work to part-time work and took a significant cut in pay because I had very young children at home and I wanted to be home with them a little bit. And so went a non-traditional route, and my husband worked part-time and I worked part-time, and I don't know how we survived financially, honestly. It was a crazy time, but we did, and it was wonderful. And then I mentioned before that I had serious doubts about moving from a part-time job to a full-time, more demanding job. But I made that decision because after that mentor conversation, I saw that there were a lot of things that could benefit my family and other people. So my mentor actually said, you will probably have to find a nanny, and you should consider how much this job could help that person to prepare for his or her life in the future, having their own family at some point. I had not considered that at all. I was simply looking at it as, am I a good mother if I take this job? Or am I a bad mother if I take this job? Which is getting to a whole other gender issue, which we probably won't be discussing today. But framing it that way helped me to see it very differently. And so I took the job, and it was a very different thing. I loved doing instructional design, and I worried that I would not like it as much as a manager, but I learned that I could use my instructional design skills at a whole new level, influencing the way the university moved forward with online education, and that everything I did as a designer before would help to inform the decisions that I made, that I could speak intelligently about what I thought was the best way to move forward because of that experience. So, so those are some of the resources. I would say that I tapped into my mentor resources a little more as I developed in my career. I did a lot of work with professional organizations. So I have always been a part of a professional organization. Sometimes the connection that I've had has been just regularly attending a conference. I've participated in professional development programs that are sponsored by professional organizations, and through that I've developed my network and then had opportunities to do projects with people at other universities and then present those in professional conference presentations. So that's another way that I have found that has, where I've been able to learn things that would help in career decisions. So there's just so much. So much. I think one other thing that I haven't mentioned yet that I think is really helpful, and actually this goes right back to my university undergraduate career, but when I was graduating from my master's program and knew that I had a lot of opportunities, I could go corporate, I could go military, I could go nonprofit, higher ed. I knew I had already ruled out one with my internship, and but I found through a few contacts people who were doing the job in different areas. So I set up just a very brief job shadowing with someone who worked at a local Air Force base as an instructional designer. So I got to go into the office and see what he did, and he talked about how they followed the ADDIE model, and I learned that their interpretation of everything I had learned in graduate school was very strict. And after that experience, I thought military might not be for me. And that was totally fine. After I had that experience with him, they had a job opening probably a month or two later, and he reached out to me and asked me to apply for it. So I applied because I knew that the interview process would be instructive, and that if I had certain concerns about military, I could address those informally through any questions, follow-up questions that I gave in the interview. And I generally don't like to rule out something completely just because of one experience. And so I thought that process would be good for me. So I interviewed, and then I don't think I got an offer. And I knew by the end of the interview that I wouldn't want that job. But just, I think informational interviews are a great way to learn more about career opportunities and to better identify what works for you. And I would say the last thing I would recommend, and this maybe is not an answer specifically to the question, but this is a strategy that I feel has served me so well in my life and in my career. I think we spend so much time thinking about the job that we want and how do we position ourselves to get that job that we want. How do I present myself so that they'll know that I am the right one for this job? And that's really important. But I think that the process of applying for and interviewing for a job is just as much about an individual finding out if they want that job and if it's the right fit for them, as it is about the company or organization determining if you are the right fit. So that's something that has actually helped me quite a bit in my interviewing experiences, is I never go into the interview thinking, I hope they want me, I hope I land this job. I only apply for jobs that I think I'm qualified to do. So that's my first rule. I never apply for something that I think is really out of my realm. And sometimes I do some background research with someone working there if I can, to find out if I have the right perception of the job and of my skill set match for that job. But then I go into the interview with the question, do I want this job? Would I like working with these people? Do my values align with the values of the company? Can I learn a lot from this job? And so every time I interview, because I'm asking those questions, I'm less nervous. It's not about, am I going to say the right thing? It's more about just helping the conversation flow so that they get their questions answered and I get my questions answered. And by the end, we each know if it's a good fit. And sometimes it's a good fit for one and not the other. And that's okay too. I don't mind that at all. But I feel like that's made a huge difference for me as far as making career decisions. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you so much for everything you've shared so far. So now I have a few more questions for you as we move into the question and answer section. The first one I want to ask you is, one of your first mentors was a professor, but some students feel intimidated by their professors. So what advice would you give to undergrads looking to build a relationship with faculty, and how do you maintain that relationship after you graduate?
Okay, I love that question. And I totally understand feeling intimidated by professors, because usually our interactions with them are from a point of a novice speaking to an expert. Their job is to teach us and our job is to learn. And we clearly know the difference between our expertise. Like, we're in the class because we don't know enough yet, and they're filling in the gaps for us. So it's easy to approach it from that perspective and then to feel like, I can't do this. But I think the way to approach it is to say, I'm an individual who's just beginning my development professionally, and this is another individual who has chosen a career that's focused on helping students. If you can remember that, that will make a huge difference. Not every professor is extremely student-focused. Well, there's always a few that seem to be more concerned about their discipline, and teaching is just something they do on the side, and I respect that. But there are so many faculty who really, really care about students, and that's why they do what they do. And so I think the key is to find someone like that. Find someone who you know cares about students. And then when you approach them, come with specific questions. They all have office hours, so it's really easy to get some time. You can just say, you can email or call or approach them after class if you're meeting in a classroom and say, you know what, I have some questions that are really focused on my career or educational development, and I really respect you, and I can see that you care about students. I would love your perspective on this. Could we use some of your office hours time for this, even though it's not a question specifically about this class? And I have a feeling that most of them would welcome that. They would want to help. And if somebody says no, or you get kind of a prickly response, then you can just move on to the next one. But that's what I would do. I think some of that intimidation is about how we frame the situation. And so looking at the situation differently and just saying, hey, I might be younger than them and know less about this thing than they do, but I'm an individual and my development matters, and they're going to want to help me. And just approach it that way, and then I think it'll come across well.
Thank you for that. Another question for you is, you mentioned that sometimes mentorships can tend to turn into friendships. Is there a line between mentorship and friendship, and is it okay to cross that line, or what's your opinion on
Oh boy, that is another great question. I really think the answer to that depends on how you've established the relationship in the first place. If you have a very formal mentor relationship, it may be worth taking time at the beginning to establish that and say, you know, I appreciate you providing this mentor opportunity for me, and I'm going to try to keep it very, very professional. And if, you know, I won't bring this into the realm of personal, but if you ever want that, then you can offer that. So you kind of put the ball in their court. Some of my mentor relationships were a little bit more friendship first, and friendship and professional, and then they became mentor relationships. So I might not be the best judge for that particular thing. But like I said before, if you're developing a more formal mentor relationship, you would set some ground rules first. You would say what you're expecting as far as a time commitment. And so I think it's fair to say, even say, like, I really just want to focus on professional things here, or I really respect you, and I think that you're a really great person. And so if you have any personal insights to share that would help me professionally and personally, I'm open to those things. That might open the door for friendship if you wanted that in the future. And some of these things I think just happen organically. I've worked with plenty of people who have helped me, and sometimes in a mentor role, but I'm not good friends with them. I don't keep in touch with them on a regular basis, but I know they would reach out if they needed something professionally, and I would do the same.
Thank you. So now the last question I have for you is you mentioned that you already work for a company where many employees work from home or work remotely. So do you have any quick tips for those of us that are learning to do that in the current climate?
Right. I would say take whatever time you need to when you're not in the middle of a meeting to learn the technology. And familiarity with the technology, I think, makes a huge, huge difference. And I've seen this, the design organization that I work for is mostly work from home and has been gradually moving in that direction for the last 5 years. The rest of Discover is not a work from home environment. So I've seen executives lead meetings recently where they're getting used to using the tools in their own home. And they've done WebEx meetings or Teams meetings in the past, but they have had someone else running the technology. And now that they're working from home, they don't have someone from IT right there to help them with it. So it's a transition. And actually, I loved seeing that because it made me feel better about where I struggled when I started working from home. I know there have been a lot of other presentations on working from home. I think there's some also just really basic things like setting clear boundaries between work and personal life. I really try my very hardest to find some time in the middle of the day to do something for myself. It's very easy to work through lunch. It's really easy to start an hour before I need to because I can technically roll out of bed and come to my office and get started in my pajamas. But I have found that I like working a few more hours than I normally would in the office. But along with that, I give myself permission to take a little bit of time during work to do the things that I wouldn't do if I was in the office. So if a meeting ends early, then I'll take a few minutes to throw some laundry in. If I'm in a meeting where I'm observing and I'm not in the middle of a conversation, there are times I mute myself and give my kids a hug because they're crying. And I allow myself that without any guilt. So the way that I frame the situation, I think, has made a huge difference for me. When I first started working from home, it was much more like, you can't come in my office. This is my work time. I guarded it. And then I realized because I'm working from home, I'm doing more hours. And I'm not giving my family any of the flexibility that my work is getting. And so I've found a better balance by managing things that way. And I choose, sometimes I can be available for a really early meeting for someone who's on the East Coast, and I can decide if I want to do that. So because I work from home, I can say, yes, I'll do that, or no, that's family time and I'm not available. So I think just knowing what you expect and setting those boundaries for yourself and being flexible with yourself, just like you are with your employer, those are things that help.
All right. Thank you so much. That was great. I loved Andrea, all your input and all the advice, your resources, as well as how people can get mentors and everything. So thanks so much for giving us your time today, and for just being here to answer questions.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun and nice to get to know each of you.
We have likewise so enjoyed getting to know you. Thank you, as Joe said, for joining us today. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. And thank you again, Andrea, for letting us use this as a resource for listeners today and listeners to come. We're excited that I know from feedback that the series has found footing with people who, can't always join us live, but make time to listen to it afterward. And so you've given us some great insights today that I think will go on to help a lot of students who use this as a resource. And for those of you who are listening, please know that all of these are recorded and are available if you want to go back and look at anything specifically. They're available at the chas.usu.edu website. They're also available as podcasts. This summer, we're using the Chas Trailheads podcast space to upload these recordings just as audio as well. So you might feel like you don't have time to give full attention to a video, you want to listen to something in the background while you're doing other things, you also have the opportunity to do that. So look for that as well to come on the website. And we are still working on our presenter for June 25th, but that is when we anticipate that we will have the next installment in this series. And we hope you will come back and join us then at 11 on June 25th. And if you have questions in the interim, you can reach out to Joseph Banks or to myself. We're always happy to receive your feedback or hear questions about the series and help you with your own career search. So thank you everyone today who joined me. Thank you to all of our presenters and our audience. And I wish everyone a wonderful and safe day. Thank you so much.